Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and this rising star Republican airs all of NPR CEO's dirty laundry in front of Congress and the nation to hear. Let's dive in.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You
Don't know where
tweeted
statement
that in
comes from.
reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't. You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. Ha, how white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone
Seems
to pay
to be what you're
reparations, sir.
suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe
to the
it's
full extent of the
morally
law.
wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being
You
illegal.
tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my
You
time at
tweeted
NPR.
that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
do you think that a few years ago, NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of
I'll
perspectives.
take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of
you've
taxpayer
spent-
dollars, yes.
And you think that editorializing that fat is not unhealthy is appropriate?
I don't know what that article is, sir, and I'm not familiar with it, so I
This
couldn't
is
say.
fake news. Do you think that basic accommodations like doorways or seat belts represent, quote, latent fat phobia?
I don't have an opinion.
It's
on that,
also
sir.
from NPR. Do you think civility is racist?
No, sir.
No. Your outlet ran an article entitled, quote, when civility is used as a cudgel against people of color. That was on All Things Considered. Would you like to explain?
I'm not on the editorial side, sir. I'm not familiar with that story.
Oh wow, Brandon Gill, by the way, rising star in the GOP, the dude's from Texas, and he threw just nothing but fastballs right past the CEO. And if there was a pitch that would describe the CEO of NPR, it would be a screwball. Okay, you throw it like a curveball, but you throw it like this instead of twisting your hand down, and the ball will curve to the right instead of to the left. And I wouldn't mind the ball curving to the right a little bit more, particularly after the nonsense I just heard. Right there at the end, that idea of, oh, civility is actually a cudgel for social mobility. Civility is, more often than not, the best way you can move upwards. People respect people who are nicer and are often nicer to them in turn. This isn't some ugly dog-eat-dog world as much as we would like to make it out to be. And so the reality is, when there are social problems, civility usually reigns supreme. I'll use a Southern example. My own grandparents. My granddaddy was a preacher in the South, and he saw the very tail end of Jim Crow. He became a Goldwater Republican, definitely not a Dixiecrat. He left that party almost immediately once he got in and became a Goldwater Republican. But it was often the wives of the preachers that were nicer to everyone else around them and better at integrating everyone after Jim Crow. So yeah, I think the civility, just based on personal history here, works a little bit better than ridiculous protests, mass lootings, and the burning down of our cities. This is absolutely asinine. This is some progressive nonsense. This is why we call it National Progressive Radio. Oh, and by the way, that's something that's held often by their own journalists. Starting in about 2014, they started realizing that maybe, just maybe, NPR's been captured. Maybe NPR has lost the public trust. From the beginning, NPR is mostly progressive. Most mainstream media outlets are very progressive. I think that's the right way to phrase it as well, but what they've been talking about here, what Brandon Gill's talking about in this situation, isn't progressivism. It is, for lack of a better phrase, cultural Marxism, an attempt to push the envelope of people that were historically oppressed, when that's not even the best terminology to use in this situation. No academic in their right minds, and about half of them aren't in the modern era, no academic in their right mind would use that phrase, but because the progressives want to keep on pushing the envelope, and they've been doing this since 2014 under Obama, in my opinion. That's the year the progressives really became the new dominant class. And if you want to talk about class warfare, let's talk about how history isn't about class struggle. No. It's something a little bit closer, a little bit worse. It is about the struggle of the dominant class versus the ruling class. Often the king versus the nobility. And then when capitalism got invented and there started becoming a larger middle class, it was a middle class trying to join that nobility. So if you want to talk about class struggle, let's be real here. Marx only scratched the surface and still got it wrong. And so NPR, you'd think that people this intelligent would be able to pick up on that fact, because it's an attempt, history more often than not is an attempt of control. That's what it is. It's struggle in general. And instead of admitting this nuance, no, they kind of go with the classic Marxist literature, with the classic Marxist style, in order to keep on, well, preaching Marx. And it got to the point that the not former CEO, but one of the high-ranking members of NPR finally ended up writing an article in something called the Free Press, which was an organization created by a whole lot of disillusioned journalists who were basically saying the quiet part out loud, that NPR and the mainstream media has sort of lost their way. And so this dude by the name of Uri Berliner, or might be Uri Berliner, I've heard it both ways. And he basically made the point that I think NPR's lost his way, and the current CEO just went off on him. And so he finally offered his resignation a little over a year ago in 2024, in April. But this is what he had to say. So in his article in the Free Press, an online site embraced by journalists who believe that the mainstream media has become too liberal, published Berliner's piece last Tuesday. In it, he argued that NPR's coverage has increasingly reflected a rigid progressive ideology, and he argued that the network's quest for greater diversity in its workforce, a priority under Chief Executive John Lansing, had not been accompanied by a diversity of viewpoints represented in NPR shows, podcasts, or online coverage. In other words, This is what journalistic integrity looks like, and he got shouted down to the point where he felt that, nope, I can't work here anymore. That was the same CEO, not the John Lansing dude, but the same CEO is now standing in front of Congress after berating her own people. That's not a good leadership tactic, by the way, unless, of course, your main goal is not journalism. Unless your main goal is not actually educating people. Unless your main goal is pushing a narrative, trying to talk about genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts. That's just weird. Okay? That's just weird. You aren't bringing to light people that have been oppressed. You're bringing to light weirdness. Okay? Yeah, those people probably exist. Why are they so special to get the spotlight? That's a basic question I have in this situation, and the CEO cares more about pushing the envelope for cultural Marxism than actual journalistic integrity, than actually presenting a good story. That's what NPR has become. That's a reason so many journalists have decided to leave it. That's why the free press apparently was created. And I'm not talking about the free press, I'm talking about the actual online site. And of course, in true progressive fashion, they attack anyone with the slightest criticism of themselves. That is what NPR has become, and that's why I'm wearing today a shirt that says defund the media, because NPR should not receive a dime in federal funding or USAID funding, now that we know where their money comes from. But anyways, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one, and keep your eye out for Brandon Gill. This dude's a rising star.